Hello, God bless you. My name's Stephen. I'm the pastor of Graffiti Fellowship Church, and we're located in the Coney Island section of southern Brooklyn in New York City. And it's my privilege to welcome you to our daily devotion. This is where we read a chapter from the Bible each day, and today we're reading Mark chapter 6. We are going through books in order, and we started in this series with the Gospel of Matthew. We read through all 28 chapters of Matthew, and now today we've arrived at the 6th chapter of Mark. Mark's the second book of the New Testament and the second of the Gospels. There are 4 Gospels in the New Testament, and the Gospels are these books that tell about the life and the ministry of Jesus. And we've got a whole lot to learn from the Gospels if we call ourselves disciples or followers of Jesus, if we call ourselves Christians, or if we're just curious about what the Christian faith entails, because the Gospels give us the very best example of what the day-to-day life of a Christ follower should look like. We call this series our daily devotion, and we've just borrowed that term. The term devotion is, or devotional, is used a lot in Christian circles, and it references people's daily time with God. Usually, a daily devotion involves reading the Bible and sometimes reading some other helpful source. A lot of books are written for the purpose of encouraging people's time with God each day. And so, very briefly, before we get into today's chapter, let's think about what that word devotion means. It simply means to give your heart to something. That's my own definition, but I think it's a pretty good one. We're devoted to something if it has our heart. And if it has our heart, then we're committed to it. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to foster, to grow, not only to sustain, but to grow, to always be going deeper in our love and commitment to God. And one of the key ways that we do that is by reading the Bible, which is His Word, as often as we can, and we encourage people to do that daily. And so this is just a tool to help with that. And so today we're going to read, as I said, Mark chapter 6, and this chapter is a little longer. I think this is the longest chapter that we've seen yet in Mark. The subsections that we will read today, and these subsections, these are just portions of the chapter. And in most Bibles, and in the Bible that I'm reading from here, which is the New Living Translation, there'll be little subtitles that tell you what the section is about. And those different subsections that we will encounter today are Jesus rejected at Nazareth, the death of John the Baptist, Jesus feeds the 5,000, and Jesus walks on water. So some of those are very famous stories that you might have some awareness of, even if you've not ever read the Bible for yourself. So let's get into Mark chapter 6. Verse 1 begins. Jesus left that part of the country and returned with his disciples to Nazareth, his hometown. The next Sabbath he began teaching in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. They asked, "Where did he get all this wisdom and the power to perform such miracles?" Then they scoffed, "He's just a carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon, and his sisters live right here among us." They were deeply offended, and they refused to believe in him. Then Jesus told them, "A prophet is honored everywhere except in his hometown and among his relatives and his own family." And because of their unbelief, he couldn't do any miracles among them except to place his hands on a few sick people and heal them. And he was amazed at their unbelief. Then Jesus went out from village to village, teaching the people, and he called his 12 disciples together and began sending them out 2 by 2. giving them authority to cast out evil spirits. He told them to take nothing for their journey except a walking stick. No food, no traveler's bag, no money. He allowed them to wear sandals, but not to take a change of clothes. Wherever you go, he said, stay in the same house until you leave town. But if any place refuses to welcome you or to listen to you, shake its dust from your feet as you leave to show that you've abandoned these people to their fate. So the disciples went out, telling everyone they met to repent of their sins and to turn to God. They cast out many demons and healed many sick people, anointing them with olive oil. Verse 14, Herod Antipas the king soon heard about Jesus because everyone was talking about him. Some were saying, this must be John the Baptist raised from the dead. That's why he can do such miracles. Others said, he's the prophet Elijah. Still others said, he's a prophet like the other great prophets of the past. When Herod heard about Jesus, he said, John, the man I beheaded, has come back from the dead. For Herod had sent soldiers to arrest and imprison John as a favor to Herodias. She had been his brother Philip's wife, but Herod had married her. And John had been telling Herod, it's against God's law for you to marry your brother's wife. So Herodias bore a grudge against John and wanted to kill him. But without Herod's approval, she was powerless. For Herod respected John, and knowing that he was a good and holy man, he protected him. Herod was greatly disturbed whenever he talked with John, but even so, he liked to listen to him. Herodias' chance finally came on Herod's birthday. He gave a party for his high government officials, army officers, and the leading citizens of Galilee. Then his daughter, also named Herodias, came in and performed a dance that greatly pleased Herod and all his guests. Ask me for anything you like, the king said to the girl, and I will give it to you. He even vowed, I'll give you whatever you ask, up to half my kingdom. Verse 24, she went out and she asked her mother, what should I ask for? Her mother told her, ask for the head of John the Baptist. So the girl hurried back to the king and told him, I want the head of John the Baptist right now on a tray. Then the king deeply regretted what he had said, but because of the vows he had made in front of his guests, he couldn't refuse her. So he immediately sent an executioner to the prison to cut off John's head and bring it to him. The soldier beheaded John in the prison, brought his head on a tray, and gave it to the girl, who then took it to her mother. When John's disciples heard what had happened, they came to get his body and buried it in a tomb. The apostles returned to Jesus from their ministry tour and told him all they had done and taught. Then Jesus said, let's go off by ourselves to a quiet place and rest a while. He said this because there were so many people coming and going that Jesus and his apostles didn't even have time to eat. So they left by boat for a quiet place where they could be alone, but many people recognized them and saw them leaving. People from many towns ran ahead along the shore and got there ahead of them. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. Late in the afternoon, his disciples came to him and said, this is a remote place and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the nearby farms and villages and buy something to eat. But Jesus said, you feed them. With what? They asked. We'd have to work for months to earn enough money to buy food for all these people. How much bread do you have? He asked. Go and find out. They came back and reported, we have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And then Jesus told the disciples to have the people sit down in groups on the green grass, and so they sat down in groups of 50 or 100. Jesus took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. He looked up toward heaven and blessed them. Then, breaking the loaves into pieces, he kept giving the bread to the disciples so they could distribute it to the people. He also divided the fish for everyone to share, and they all ate as much as they wanted. And afterward, the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls left over. A total of 5,000 men and their families were fed from those loaves. Verse 45. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and head across the lake to Bethsaida while he sent the people home. After telling everyone goodbye, he went up to the hills by himself to pray. Late that night, the disciples were in the boat in the middle of the lake, and Jesus was alone on the land. He saw that they were in serious trouble, rowing hard and struggling against the wind and waves. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on the water. He intended to go past them, but when they saw him walking on the water, they cried out in terror, thinking he was a ghost. They were all terrified when they saw him. But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage, I'm here." Then he climbed into the boat and the wind stopped. They were totally amazed, for they still didn't understand the significance of the miracle of the loaves. Their hearts were too hard to take it in. After they had crossed the lake, they landed at Gennesaret. They brought the boat to shore and climbed out, and the people recognized Jesus at once and ran throughout the whole area, carrying sick people on mats to wherever they heard he was. Wherever he went, in villages, cities, or the countryside, they brought the sick out to the marketplaces. They begged him to let the sick touch at least the fringe of his robe, and all who touched him were healed. That's the end of Mark chapter 6. There's one subsection that I skipped, I think, when I read them ahead of time. One of those subsections, the second of them, was Jesus sending out the 12 disciples. So that's where we read about Jesus sending his followers out for a ministry trip. And so several things happening here in this chapter, and a lot to ponder and a lot to learn from, of course. One of the things that really stands out to me is that the apostles, not only did they witness Jesus feeding 5,000 people with 5 pieces of bread, 5 loaves of bread, a couple of fish. I mean, think about, and one of the details, one of the takeaways that's often highlighted is they counted the men who were in attendance, and that was just the culture of the day, 5,000 men. But certainly there were many more than 5,000 people present because of the families that were also in attendance. So the women and children would not have been a part of the head count. So easily 3 times that number, as many as 15,000 people, probably well above. People were in attendance, all fed by what amounts to a sack lunch. And the significance, the undeniable, miraculous provision of that is something really profound. It's something really special. It's something that's so significant we're still reading about it 2,000 years later. And yet these men, these disciples, these apostles, who were, we started today's video by defining the word devotion. They were devoted to Jesus. They had left everything to follow him and to live with him and to learn from him full time. They were away from their jobs, their vocation, their families, their homes. And not only did they witness this miracle, but they participated in it firsthand. They distributed the fish and they distributed the bread. They fed these many thousands. They picked up the leftovers. And even they didn't get it. It says that their hearts were too hard to even comprehend. And that could mean a few different things, and we don't have time to chase all that down now. But that's just something that really stands out to me in this chapter. As we grow in our devotion to the Lord, those of us who have committed our lives to following Jesus, One of the things that I think we need to pursue and to constantly ask God for in our times of prayer is for soft hearts rather than hard hearts, because it's very easy to have a hard heart and miss some of what God's doing. As I said, that's the end of Mark chapter 6. Thanks so much for participating in this video. If you think it might bless someone or help them, please feel free to share this. However is easiest or best or makes the most sense for you to do that. Hope you'll join us again next time for Mark chapter 7. God bless.